Today, on Ancient Insight, we will be exploring further the ancient Hebrew word al, particularly as it is used in the over 5,000 sentences where it functions as a preposition. As mentioned in our previous video, the word al can be understood as meaning strong leader, the dominant and influential member of any group. This makes perfect sense of the fact that the Bible translators, particularly those of the King James Version, translate this word as God. We also briefly explored how the exact same word, al, functions as the preposition to or toward, pointing to the strong leader of the sentence, the dominant noun. Our purpose in this video is to build on that exploration by offering a few key definitions, exploring a few examples from the Scriptures, testing this theory in instances where the translators chose other prepositions, such as against or before, and also examining the effect that alternating word choices can have on understanding. The Oxford Pocket English Dictionary defines a preposition as a word governing and usually preceding a noun or pronoun and expressing a relation to another word or element in the clause. Additionally, yourdictionary.com briefly describes a preposition as an important part of the English language in that it shows a relationship between the nouns and pronouns in a sentence. So there it is, laid out for us. Any sentence where a preposition is present is going to include at least two elements. Conceptually, these two elements resemble the two oxen which we described in the God Part 1 video. Whenever the preposition in a sentence happens to be the word to or toward, or in Biblical Hebrew, al, the two elements described in the sentence are going to be yoked together. Just like our analogous team of oxen, whenever two things are yoked together, the strongest of the two is always leading. The weaker is always inclined toward the stronger. As the Oxford Pocket English Dictionary puts it, the word to expresses motion in the direction of. The submissive ox is always moving in or at the direction of the dominant, becoming like it. In both English and Biblical Hebrew, the dominant element in a sentence is easily identified since it always follows right after the word to or al. A pattern starts to emerge as we encounter these sentences. Right before the al, we see a submissive ox, a noun phrase. Then we encounter a yoke, the preposition to or al, and then we encounter the dominant ox, the noun phrase, which is influencing the first to move toward it. The first time we encounter this in the Scriptures is at MaSHaH, Genesis 1:9, in the phrase, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place." The first noun, the submissive ox, which we encounter is the waters. Shortly after, we see the yoke al, translated as unto, an archaic form of to, and then immediately after, the dominant ox, the noun phrase one place. The waters, which were previously scattered or divided, are gathered and become just like the one place. Another example is at Iowa, Job 11:13, where we encounter the phrase, "Stretch out thine hands toward him." In this phrase, hands is the submissive element, toward is the yoke, and him the dominant element, which the hands are stretching in the direction of. Of course, the translators didn't always choose the two prepositions, to, into, unto, and toward, as translations for al. Let's test a couple of the more seemingly unrelated words the translators chose to see if we can still find the submissive, yoke, dominant pattern, which we have found in our other examples. Starting with the preposition against. The English word against means in opposition to, a seeming contradiction to the idea of a submissive element moving toward the dominant element it is yoked to. Let's look at the first occurrence. MaSHaH, Genesis 4:8. Cain rose up against Abel, his brother, and slew him. It is apparent that Cain is functioning in opposition to his brother in seeking to end his life, and the word against fits that emotional tone. But this portion of the verse is describing Cain's physical location and could have just as effectively been translated, Cain rose up to Abel, as it is in the mechanical translation of Genesis by Jeff Benner. Cain, as the submissive element in this clause, is changing his physical position in order to be more like, or closer to, the dominant element, his brother Abel. The element which is changing is the submissive. The one remaining the same is the dominant, the master or the strong leader. Next, let's take a look at al when it's translated as the preposition before. MaSHaH, Genesis 12:15, speaking of Sarah. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. Webster's 1828 dictionary defines the preposition before as in front, on the side with the face. We certainly get a picture in this verse of Pharaoh's princes standing in front of his face telling him about the beautiful Sarah. But again, the use of the word before is not dictated by the Hebrew, or else we would expect to see the word lapanai, meaning in face of. Instead, it is a stylistic choice made by the translators. It could have just as easily been rendered, the princes commended her to Pharaoh, as it is again in Benner's mechanical translation of Genesis. But we must ask, where is the movement from submissive to dominant in this phrase? Sarah certainly doesn't seem to be moving or changing in any way, relative to the princes or to Pharaoh. This time, the submissive element is understood or stated between the lines as Sarah's reputation. The princes saw Sarah acquiring her reputation and then brought that reputation to the dominant unmoving element of the phrase, Pharaoh. Tragically, in the very next verse, Sarah is captured and physically moved to Pharaoh's house. These are just 2 out of the 38 different English prepositions used to translate al in the King James Version. But we hope that this demonstrates that the submissive yoke-dominant pattern remains intact in the underlying meanings of the al preposition sentences, regardless of stylistic word choices. Let's return now to a familiar phrase which comes up often on this channel, block logic. Block logic refers to a way of understanding whereby all considerations work together to demonstrate a collective truth. Various facets of meaning that seem to be unrelated, when analyzed to find their commonality, cooperate to give us a broader and deeper understanding of a concept. Applying that logic to the word al, we should not be comfortable simply saying that sometimes al means God and other times it means to, even if effective English demands that we translate it that way. Words create impressions of meaning on our mind each time they are heard or seen. Since the original audience for the scriptures, people who understood Hebrew, heard the word al and received the impression of meaning that it makes, which we propose to be strong leader, regardless of whether it was functioning as a noun, name, or preposition. Shouldn't we seek to be of that same mind? Please understand that this is not a call for a new translation. There is too much apparent distance between the connotations or mental impressions of the word God and the word to for us to choose one over the other and have it make sense to the average reader. But in our quest for ancient insight into our ancient scriptures, let's try a quick experiment in hopes of gathering these separate words together into one place. What if we took the simple phrase, I walked to the store, and replaced the word to with God? I walked God the store. Although this doesn't seem to make sense to English-speaking minds, this is closer to what a Hebrew would have heard. Perhaps if we gently substitute some synonyms and synonymous phrases and expose unstated but present truths hiding between the lines, a clearer picture may emerge. I walked, strong leader, the store. Or, I walked, my strong leader was the store. I walked under the direction of the store. I walked guided by the location of the store. Or I walked under the influence of the store. Or perhaps, more elaborately put, the store, with its promise of well-stocked shelves, pulled at me as I stood hungry before my empty cupboards, and though I was tired, I gave in and walked. The common thread of strong leadership ties these various phrases together as we see the dominant unchanging element, the store, influencing the submissive I to come towards it. Now, for the other approach, let's look at the simple phrase, "This is my God." Replacing God with toward, we get, "This is my toward." Or perhaps we could say, "This is my inclination," or "This is that which I am moving toward," or even, "This is that which is pulling me forward, causing me to become nearer to it." So while the words to and toward, the prepositional use of al, and God, the noun or objective use of al, perform different jobs in the world of thought expression called sentences, they both ultimately rest in one place. They function in a united purpose, and that purpose is to indicate a source of influence. We hope that you are finding this helpful. May you bless and be blessed.